Well, Donald Trump Jr., I have a clip for you of him. He has floated one of the stranger conspiracy theories I've seen in regard to January 6th, but honestly, it's all bonkers now coming from this part of the right wing. I gotta say, just so that y'all know, and I've mentioned this before, but so many conservatives within my life, my personal life, growing up with, and all that, and I genuinely feel bad for many of them who every day, if they tune into any somewhat reasonable media outlet, will have to hear about how the right is doing X, Y, and Z. That is bonkers. And that is what the driving force of the right is right now. This MAGA, election denier, conspiracy theory part is driving the agenda of the modern Republican Party. So it's accurate to refer to it as such. But if you're kind of a lifelong Mitt Romney Republican or whatever, and you used to think of yourself as the right, and now the right is what we're about to watch here, I genuinely feel bad for you. And that it's horrible. I wish we could only be engaging with individuals such as yourself. I guess that would be a much more productive conversation, but instead this is modern American politics. And here's Donald Trump Jr. saying that, you remember those pipe bombs that were placed on January 6th, RNC and DNC headquarters, if I'm not mistaken. He's saying this is also a part of the Democratic plot to make Trump supporters look bad. Okay.
They had the insurrection narrative. You notice how the bombers at the DNC and at the RNC, the guy that left pipe bombs there, just sort of disappeared from the news. It's like, you know what? In case there wasn't an insurrection or there wasn't something bad at the Capitol, they had that to fall back on to continue and perpetuate the evil narrative of what was going on that day. But since they were able to create and apparently manipulate footage of that day, as well as just have enough, outrage cycle and run with it, we can forget about the bomber. We don't really need that anymore. That was just sort of the backup plan if there wasn't enough insurrection created, in my mind. And that seems to be what has to have been done here. You see, they had the insurrection.
Just for a moment, I'm going to leave him up muted next to me while I talk about this. What a strange, strange person. Just as a quick side note, if your I've said this before, but if your camera's cutting off this kind of here, perfectly fine. But probably it's not the best plan to have your hands in the frame like 100% of the time, directing traffic as you talk. I get hand gestures. I'm doing hand gestures all the time, but just constantly being up by your face is a little distracting, I gotta say. But setting that aside, get him off my screen. I need to focus on what I'm saying. It truly is kind of, I think for him it's disingenuous, but for those who follow him, something that happens where once you put on the conspiracy theory goggles, everything looks like a conspiracy theory. What would be the purpose of this whole story we're hearing from many on the right about the Democrats coordinating January 6th to make Trump supporters look bad? Why would you risk wrecking your party for ages to come with one of the greatest, most complex, coordinated conspiracies in history to make it perfectly look like Trump supporters who attacked the Capitol? And then as a backup plan, you have pipe bombs over here and there to make it even worse, just in case, to prevent the certification that you supported, because we wanted Joe Biden to have his election certified, as everyone should have wanted the person who won to have their election certified. And all of that, you're risking being exposed at some point by just one person who leaks it. Of all the people who would have had to be involved with the FBI and Nancy Pelosi and Antifa, just to make Trump supporters look bad, just to justify locking up a few, which is an irrelevant amount of people within the whole grand scheme of kind of what this story would be. That is wild, because usually the way that conspiracy theories are built is, and now my camera's lag. Okay. The way that conspiracy theories get built is you have a convincing motive or reason why something else could be the story, right? And then that convincing reason justifies some illogical thinking when it comes to the lack of evidence. So, for example, the election being stolen, it's so dangerous that people say that, and there's no evidence that supports that, but you understand why someone could think that there would be a motive to steal an election because people want power. And so at least there's a motive there that makes some sense. What's the motive behind the Democrats doing all of this to make Trump supporters look bad and again to lock up a handful of them? That's bonkers. Bonkers. And then on this subject, on the January 6th conspiracy theories, and now Tucker Carlson's kind of reinvigorating all of that with the propaganda piece he's been doing. The Twitter account Decoding Fox News did a nice clip here highlighting one of the deep, unserious bits of this where Tucker's trying to build this narrative that the QAnon shaman was in league with the Capitol Police and maybe who knows else, Antifa too, and the Nancy Pelosi and all of that. And one of the things Tucker Carlson says is there's some dispute about how the QAnon shaman got into the Capitol. But as the creator of this Twitter account highlights, there's not any dispute.
And at the center of it, the single most famous person arrested that day was a Navy veteran from Arizona called Jacob Chansley, often referred to as the QAnon shaman. Jacob Chansley became the face of January 6th, a dangerous conspiracy theorist dressed in outlandish costume who led the violent insurrection to overthrow American democracy. For these crimes, Chansley was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison, far more time than many violent criminals now receive. What did Jacob Chansley do to receive this punishment? To this day, there is dispute over how Chansley got into the Capitol building.
So I'm not sure what Tucker Carlson's talking about in terms of a dispute of when Jacob Chansley entered the building, because Tucker Carlson himself showed it 6 times. There it is. That's the first time we see it. That's Jacob Chansley. He's really easy to spot. This is 23 seconds worth of video that was played last week, repeated. He'd either have it on the entire screen or partial screen. There's Jacob Chansley again. That's number 2.
And then you can imagine she continues with all 6 examples. But I don't know what this is even for. Such a lazy attempt at propaganda. We don't, something's being hidden from us. We don't know how the QAnon shaman got into the Capitol. And then you're showing it right before you were saying that. Doesn't make any sense. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again now. Tucker and many others, if you're going to try to deceive us, be better at it. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get the full bonus show every single Saturday, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley. Link in the description.